Whew. Hey there. We all know the environmental and ethical reasons for following a plant-based diet, but what happens inside our bodies as we swap out animal proteins for more plant-based ones? I'm Adam KRUGER, and you may know me as the PlantX Vegalier, but I'm also a lifelong athlete. Join me as I speak with different members of the medical advisory board here at PlantX to figure out exactly what goes on inside your body as you follow a more plant-based diet. Welcome to Medically Speaking. If you're anything like me, you've always wanted to actually sit down with a doctor and pick their brain about what they think is the best way to eat and whether a plant-based diet is actually really healthy. Now, I know it is, but it's great to hear it from the professionals. I spoke today with Dr. Ed Tam. He's a hepatologist, which means he specializes in the liver, and we got his perspective on what a plant-based diet does to the body. Check it out.
I'm Dr. Ed Tam. I'm a hepatologist or a liver specialist here in Vancouver, BC.
Dr. Tam, Ed, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So can you tell me real quickly what your thoughts are about a plant-based diet? Let's just start there.
Over the years, I think, for me, I've started to work more plants into my diet, that's for sure. It's shifting more towards a plant-focused diet, but I have to say I'm not 100%. I don't eat vegan, I'm not 100% plant-based, but I definitely understand and I'm starting to appreciate more and more the environmental and I think the health impacts of, moving that direction. And my area of interest in liver disease, one of the conditions that honestly in my training was really just an up and coming issue, but now, 11 years into practice, I'm seeing as really the number one thing that I'm seeing is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And that's a condition that we know is really seriously impacted by lifestyle choices. And I think that more and more the medical literature is showing us that a more plant-focused diet can be healthy, for the liver and for an individual in general.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's something that I feel like a lot of the medical community is starting to kind of really open their eyes to, or not open. I think the research has actually been around for a very long time that a plant-based diet or a plant-heavy diet, I should say, is really beneficial for people. And we will get into the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in a separate episode. But today I just want to discuss the idea behind the fact that some people feel like you have to go 100% vegan, or otherwise there's no benefits. And I while I am personally vegan and I love it and it's been wonderful for me, I want to kind of dispel the myth that it's all or nothing.
Yeah, I totally agree, with that statement. And, whether it's just in my own life or counseling other patients about lifestyle modification, I think it's really challenging to really talk about sustainable change, right? And going from 0 to 100, whatever direction you're headed, I think is really challenging. But I think that making incremental change that is working towards a positive direction makes sense. And so whether it's counseling patients or thinking in my own life, I think taking a step in that direction makes sense. And I think maybe it's very challenging going from an omnivorous diet to a vegan diet, one day to the next. I think gradually moving that direction certainly makes sense and benefits are as we, have talked about.
It's a similar sort of thing where, doing that complete 180 is not necessarily A, possible, but even B, beneficial, right? It's got to be a gradual turn and change, right?
I think so. And I think it can be really difficult to get buy-in, certainly from patients, and it can be overwhelming. If I see somebody, I want to ask them to do, 10 different things all at once. It can be a lot. But if I see somebody and say, maybe one day out of the week, you're eating really plant-focused and you're being mindful of portion size and refined carbohydrate intake, something that's very concrete but very attainable. Things like that, I think, certainly in my own life, and I think when I'm counseling patients, it definitely leads to more sustainable change. Yeah.
Agreed. I think it's one of those things where just the human condition, when we are able to achieve measurable goals that are not impossible to get to, right? If we can achieve those goals bit by bit, it's a lot easier to actually make that change. Like if the rungs on a ladder are super far apart, it's harder to climb. But if there's a bunch of mini steps, we'll eventually get to the top, right?
Absolutely. I think it applies to all aspects of life for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things. So I'm glad we got to shed a little bit of light on that. From your perspective, as far as, plant-based eating, counseling your patients to switch things up, what would you say is the number one tip of advice you give them when they're trying to modify their lifestyle or their diet?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I encounter a lot is just people are just used to the way that they've always eaten, how they grew up, what would be on, the table as they were growing up. And I think that people are not opposed to change, just they haven't really thought about it much, and they haven't really been presented with the thought of making change and what possible benefits that can come along. So I think for me, thinking about, counseling patients and asking them to consider a different way of eating, it's more just about introducing the idea of making a change and then talking about what's going to happen at the end of that. And that's a healthier life, and I think a lot of patients are willing to do it, but you just got to kind of give them, the steps to take to get there.
That's amazing. I definitely agree. I think giving them the steps to get there is such a powerful thing. What would you say right now, as we're about to wrap up this little conversation, what would you say to anyone out there who's going, I've heard that plant-based eating could definitely be beneficial to me. It can make me healthier. I'm just not sure where to start. What would your bit of advice be for that person who's wondering or sort of ready to dabble?
Yeah, I would say, from my perspective, give it a shot one day out of the week and see how you feel, see how it feels that day, see how it fits into your lifestyle as a start. And I think that for most people I've encountered, or thinking about it from my own perspective, once you do that, it's going to be experienced as a positive thing.
I think that's amazing advice. Thank you so much for being on the episode today. I'm really looking forward to discussing further or going a little bit more granular and in depth with different aspects of how a plant-based diet can help the liver in general in a future episode. So we'll definitely be bringing you back. Thank you, Dr. Tam, for being here with us today.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Well, I hope you learned something new here today, because I sure did. If you have any questions, just put them in the comments below and we'll address them in a future episode. Until then, stay fit, stay healthy, and eat more plants. See you next time.